Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 24th of January. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather around Alaska, no matter where you're watching from tonight. We welcome you. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. And remember, you've got a lot of different options to get your weather information. No matter what part you're watching from tonight, you can easily make a phone call to the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. If you're on St. Lawrence Island, the number to remember when you're using that is 123. I learned that from my good friends out there on St. Lawrence Island, of course. And weather.gov/Alaska is still up and running. You can always click on the page, get your local forecast there, and then bookmark that. But another really useful tool is using your mobile device. Use a different address, though, mobile.weather.gov. And that'll look a little bit different on your device there. And just simply type in the location where you want to go. Let's say Nundalton. Type that in, save that, and then share that, the little share button from your browser, whether you're on Android or iPhone, whatever you like to use. Share that to your home screen, and then from there on, it'll act like a weather app, which is really cool. It's lightweight and much easier to use if you don't have a really big connection, a big broadband connection, or you're really, really slow sometimes. So, you know, that's an easy way to use that. Mobile.weather.gov. If you can't find what you're looking for, let me know. david.snyder@noaa.gov. I'm always privileged to serve you in any way I can, so please let me know how I can help. Let's take a look at what we see around southeast tonight. Apparently it is raining around Haines and Skagway and snowing. Snow for Haines, we expect that to continue, especially up above Haines, probably around 2,000 feet and higher. You might get about 3 to 5 inches of snow, and especially between 3 and 9 o'clock in the morning, it's going to come down hard and fast. So you have a winter weather advisory posted for your area, winter storm watch, still in effect there, but looking like that's probably going to lean a little bit toward the advisory there as we go. Now for Skagway, freezing rain is an issue, and temperatures are slowly climbing this afternoon, and it'll probably be improving there after dinner time tonight. But as we go through the overnight hours there, it should become rain. So winter weather advisories have been posted through the afternoon. We expect that to improve. But for Haines and higher, Klondike Highway land, you're looking at about 3 to 5 inches of snow. And again, some of that's going to come down hard and fast. As you go out into the Alaska Range, winter weather advisories are also posted as we head into the overnight hours. Midnight or so is when a lot of these will wind up. About 1 to 5 inches of snow in general for the area, but on top of that, you're going to have some gusty winds, probably around 50 miles per hour at their peak. That includes Denali, areas around the national park, Healy, southward toward Broad Pass, and then all along your Alaska Range passes there. So north of Delta Junction and north of Glen Allen in the higher terrain is where we would expect some more of that snow and some of the wind. As you look out to the west, we start to see winter weather advisories there for the Koyukuk Valley, the lower Yukon Valley, and the Yukon Delta. In these regions, we're expecting as much as 1 to 4 inches of snow, but you're also going to have the added joy of experiencing a little bit of freezing rain with that. Of course, I'm being very sarcastic. Freezing rain with the snow, probably not the best situation, but it is a sign that we're getting a lot of warm air wrapped up into our weather picture here across western Alaska. So your weather will gradually improve starting early tomorrow morning, but winter weather advisories will start winding down as we get into about early morning tomorrow to about noon. Midday Friday from the lower Yukon and into the Koyukuk Valley there. So slow improvements as we head through tomorrow morning. The Chukchi Coast and areas along the Chukchi through the western Arctic coast, you're looking at snow and mainly gusty winds. So winter weather advisories are posted for you through tonight and into early tomorrow morning. But mainly due to wind and blowing the snow around there. Those gusts probably up to about 40, maybe 50 miles per hour at their peak. So just about all the higher terrain and areas out in the west are all looking at least a little bit of snow and in some cases some wind. Here's the big weather picture, and you can see it wave after wave after wave working their way from south to north thanks to a Southerly moving jet stream blowing right into Alaska out of the mid-latitudes, and a lot of warm and wet air moving our way with that. We're going to see a slug of this moisture move its way towards southeast. Already a little bit has been working through, obviously with some freezing rain and snow there across the northern Lynn Canal. As that continues, we will see more periods of rain and snow and probably freezing rain across parts of west and southwestern Alaska in the next couple days. We're looking at temperatures pushing into the 40s for many across the southern Bering all the way into south central Alaska, and needless to say, it is going to be fairly mild in southeast as well. Temperatures are coming up across the interior. We're going to be a little slower to bring those temperatures up across the North Slope, but you too will be looking at temperatures moderating up above their normal levels for this time of the season. Let's take a look at the weather map. It's a little complicated. There's an awful lot of frontal boundaries here, but the main ones to focus on will be the ones we see in the Gulf. What you see across the north are indeed real boundaries, but you're going to see those kind of ebb and flow a little bit as we go in the next couple maps. So here we go. Low pressure across the Kenai Peninsula is sitting at 996 millibars. This is one of the first surges to come northward, and one that's really going to have a notable impact, I think, on temperatures as we go into the next 24 hours for south central. Again, many places in the lower terrain working into the 40s. For southeast, already warmer air is moving in. Rain is moving in across a large part of the panhandle, and another surge behind it is the one that's probably going to bring some of the heavier rainfall. That'll move in as we head into tonight and tomorrow, and in some parts of the central, maybe the southern panhandle, as much as 2 to 4 inches of rain. Already the initial surge is bringing that warmth into the Lynn Canal, and that's where we're seeing that transition take place from the freezing rain to more of a rain situation around Skagway as we head into tonight. Out west, another low here just south of Bristol Bay and right over the eastern chain. That's at about 970 millibars. This surge is bringing that warm, wet air up into the lower terrain of southwestern Alaska, the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta. Right now, most of what we're seeing on the observations is snow, but as we are already noting there are some places on the Yukon Delta and the Koyukuk that are probably going to be dealing with some freezing rain because of that warm air transition. Out across the west, another low here at 975 millibars. That is continuing that flow of warm, wet air northward into the Bering Sea. Now, as we get into tonight, the focus for really strong winds and warm, wet air will be centered around this 980 millibar low outside of Prince William Sound and south of the Kenai Peninsula and Resurrection Bay. That's going to stir up the wind. We're looking at winds coming up to probably storm force, maybe some strong gales inside of Prince William Sound, but in the northern Gulf here, winds are really going to come up sharply as we head into tonight and again through most of the daytime tomorrow. We've got heavy rain painted in parts of central and southern southeast, and that snow level is going up. Remember, a winter weather advisory for the Klondike Highway above about 2,000 feet. Snow will be likely across a large part of the Brooks Range and parts of the Kobuk-Noatak Valley, the Chukchi Coast, all the way down the Yukon and Kuskokwim Deltas, as low pressure there sits right over Nunivak Island and south at about 976 millibars. Notice you've got a westerly wind coming inland over the ice. This is going to be moving a lot of that Bristol Bay ice around as well, and still pushing that ice away from the coast the further north you go into the Bering Strait. One low moves out of the way across the Aleutians, but you'll notice warm, wet air is coming in right behind that. As we get into Friday, this low is moving quickly into the central and eastern Aleutians, and look at the pressure gradient tightening up here. Areas of rain and snow should be expected from Adak to Atka, Nikolsky, Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, and all the way into Bristol Bay. We're looking at snow showers again across a large part of west and southwestern Alaska, but temperatures are going to be pretty warm, so don't be surprised if you see some of this mixing in with rain as we get into the forecast tomorrow. Look for areas of snow across some of the upper Yukon Valley, and rain and snow for parts of south central. Lower terrain, it's mostly going to be rain, I think, and for many in southeast, rainfall will continue, but the intensity should let up as we go through the daytime on Friday. As we get into Saturday, high pressure starts to chip away at the moisture. Residual rain and light rain showers expected for southeast on Saturday with the high building in. But look at this steady south flow we develop across the west coast. Periods of rain, maybe occasional heavily around southwestern Alaska, but remember, hit and miss periods of cold rain and snow will be passing through southwest as that temperature boundary works its way northward. Low pressure out across the west, 966 millibars there, spinning up, strengthening. That means more wind for the central chain, more wind for the Pribilofs, and chewing away at that newly formed ice edge that has been dropping southward towards St. Matthew with only a few nautical miles there as of early this morning. It's it's going to be moving that around. So what you see out there is going to be changing an awful lot due to the warm air and due to the wind. But once the wind settles down, that'll probably freeze in fairly quickly. A boundary up north is focusing wind right along and just north of the coast, so look for some of the strongest winds to be fairly close to the northern coastline, but maybe not right over your village. Look for that southerly wind, though, to try and nudge that northward, if not completely break up that boundary. Let's take a look at temperatures, because this is really important the next couple of days. It's going to be pretty mild for southeast, 30s and 40s for you, Sitka up to 42. South central temperatures stay above freezing for a lot of locations tonight. In Prince William Sound, nearly 40 degrees in some places like Cordova. Kodiak Island, 37, southwest, lower to mid-30s there. Nunivak Island, 24. Gamble, Savunga, single digits. 6 below in Fort Yukon, one of our coldest temperatures, as well as Utqiagvik at 13 below. As you get out towards Sandpoint, 36, 33 for Unalaska, Dutch Harbor, Adak, and Atka, and Shemya. High temperatures tomorrow warm to about 40 for many parts of South Central, including Homer, Seward, Valdez, even Talkeetna pushing that mid to upper 30-degree range. 27 or so around Fairbanks, so still below freezing, but warming up. 15 around Arctic Village, and you're looking at temps from about 5 to 10 below on the North Slope, 29 in Nome and 22 in Kotzebue, or Shishmaref, I should say, and lower to mid-40s for many in southeast. Kotzebue looking at 27. Overnight lows Saturday morning, 30s and 40s for southeast. South central goes below freezing again, so any rain on the surface is going to refreeze easily. Mid-20s for Bristol Bay, all the way down the Alaska Peninsula, Cold Bay and False Pass at or above freezing. The middle and northern interior are looking at single digits to teens, 13 in Nome, 15 in Kotzebue, and 13 below for Utqiagvik, with highs on Saturday. Back around 0 for the North Slope, mid to upper 30s for Southwest. Another warm surge here for King Salmon, 42, 41 in Kodiak, lower to mid 40s for Southeast, and mid to upper 30s to about 40 for many parts of South Central. Talkeetna at 36 degrees. The mild weather will continue as we go through the rest of your weekend.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And on to your aviation forecast now. With the waves of weather working northward, it should be no surprise that will be widespread visibility and ceiling restrictions for aviators looking for widespread IFR across a large part of southeast as we start up your Friday morning across South Central, Prince William Sound, all the way out towards St. Lawrence Island and through the Bering Strait and the west coast there and the western Arctic coast for sure. NVFR conditions are expected to be across the North Slope. You're going to find a few holes across the interior, but they won't be that widespread. And across many parts of the southern Bering, the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak, all the way out across the chain, looking for NVFR there. As we get into the afternoon, you'll see some improvements across the central and western Gulf Coast, but overall, at least NVFR will be the rule for pretty much any part of Alaska. And chances are some of that's going to be IFR throughout your day across the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, all the way down the Yukon Valley, Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula through the Bering Strait, and from about Wrangell, St. Elias, east of Valdez and Cordova into southeastern Alaska, you're looking at IFR, and the same goes for Adak and Atka throughout the day. A couple notable exceptions, you might find a few VFR breaks for St. Paul and St. George, but it could be slow going if you're trying to get back and forth from any of the hubs throughout the day. So perhaps some good news there for Friday, even though it's not a normal flying day, right? Here's a look at conditions for Saturday morning. IFR should be fairly widespread for Norton Sound, the Yukon Delta, west from Nunivak Island, and then further out into sea. The upper Yukon, the eastern Brooks Range, as well as the western Arctic coast, looking for at least flirting with IFR conditions throughout the day. And then southern parts of southeast, especially the Misty Fjords, looking at IFR to start with, marginal conditions, but gradual improvement across the Gulf as we go through the day, even though that probably means lowered ceiling and viz as we get into the afternoon on Saturday. High pressures trying to set up shop there on Saturday, so maybe some improvement by Sunday for more parts of southeast. For south central, southwest, it looks like NVFR to rule the roost. IFR conditions up north and through Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, and at least the Yukon Delta, maybe further south as warm air continues traveling northward across the west. Here are your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass we expect to see a start at IFR with a little bit of a change throughout the day, maybe toward improvement for Adigan Pass as well. As we get into the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see that hold at IFR really through most of the day. There will be periods of rain and elevation that it is going to be snow. Rainy Pass, we expect to see IFR at least leaning toward NVFR. We'll see if we get there. Windy Pass looks to maintain IFR throughout the entire day on Friday. Isabel Pass probably seeing some improvement at marginal conditions throughout your day. Mentasta Pass, we expect to see at least a start at IFR, probably leaning over toward marginal conditions as your day goes on. Dehne Pass looks like IFR through most of the day. Portage Pass, IFR at least. We'll see if we get some improvements there, but it does look like the weather's going to be pretty down and in the hole to start your day on Friday. And then Chilkoot and White Pass, not only on Friday, but also on Saturday, we expect to see IFR conditions. Freezing levels show a lot of warm, wet air here across the Gulf Coast. No surprise there. That surface freezing line kind of wiggling between St. Paul and St. Matthew. We don't see these levels coming in a whole lot further right now. It is still cold across the interior, and that's not expected to change, but it is moderating in the positive direction there, so things are certainly warming up. One thing that is changing is the icing levels. As moisture is moving northward, we're seeing a lot more potential for at least isolated moderate across the interior and the west coast, but you're still seeing those levels that are fairly high up there because the air is warming up. But the moisture needed for that, of course, is not at the surface level or at some of the lower levels. So you're seeing those levels show up there at about 5 to 6, even 7,000 feet as you get out toward Kaktovik and out across the west. As you head down toward the Misty Fjords, you can see levels above 10,000 feet. So certainly a sign of warmer air. As the jet stream goes, so goes the weather at the surface. A strong westerly flow coming in across the North Pacific, but look at the strong southerly flow coming out of the mid-latitudes. That's where the warmth and the moisture is being pushed into Alaska and feeding a ridge that's been building across the eastern Pacific and western North America for the last couple days. That will continue as we head into Friday with a west and southwesterly flow anywhere from 20 knots to 60 knots coming into south and eastern Alaska. Lighter winds across the interior, but still out of the south. And you can see several waves working across the Aleutians, some of those with winds up to 75 knots. Several other waves coming in at 3,000 feet. You can see a broad southwesterly flow here, the strongest of which bringing 50-knot winds out around Cook Inlet and southwestern Alaska. Still holding on to our easterly flow across the North Slope too. And with that, we have a broad area of turbulence tomorrow, anywhere from about 4,000 to 8,000 feet, looking for some isolated areas of isolated severe for southwest, the chain, the eastern Alaska range, and a much broader area of considerable moderate.
Planets in the kitchen. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. This week, we're going to help you put the solar system in perspective.
That's right, James. Our solar system is so large with respect to the size of the planets that most people, ourselves included, have never really had a clear concept of the scale of the universe.
To say that space is big is an understatement. How often do we think that those beautiful sparkling points of light in the sky are actually suns like our sun? Yet they're so far away, they appear as mere points of light.
And how often do we think of the differences in sizes between the various planets as they drift across our evening and morning skies?
Even with all the easy access we have to information about the universe, many of us still don't really relate to the size and distance of things when it comes to the night sky.
So, we have a neat demonstration that can help, and you can do it at home using everyday objects you can find in your kitchen.
What are we talking about? Let's show you.
Okay, let's first talk about Jupiter, Earth and our Sun. Jupiter is our largest planet, but what does that really mean? We can easily look up the fact that we could fit 1,300 Earths inside Jupiter, or we could take 1.3 million Earths to fill up our Sun.
Or take their distances, for example. If you drove in a car from the sun to the Earth at 70 miles per hour, it would take you almost 150 years to make the trip. Furthermore, it would take you almost 800 years to drive from the sun to Jupiter and almost 6,000 years to drive from the sun to Pluto.
But numbers are easily forgotten, so if you really want to relate to the cosmos, it's best to think of it in everyday terms. And what could be more everyday than your kitchen?
So, the next time you pick up an orange, pretend that it's the sun. Then take a salt shaker and sprinkle some salt in your hand. If you can pick up just one of those grains of salt, that will represent the Earth.
Then, to place them at their proper distances, put that bit of salt 30 feet away from the orange. That is the size and scale of the Earth and the Sun. Now take a black bean. This little black bean represents the planet Jupiter, circling 200 feet away, or 1 city block away from the orange.
The planet Saturn would be another black bean, 2 city blocks away, or 400 feet from the orange.
Pluto, everyone's favorite dwarf planet, would be 1 speck of finely ground pepper, 10 city blocks from the orange.
But our sun is one of billions of stars in a family we call our galaxy. On this same scale, the sun's closest neighbor, Alpha Centauri, is another orange 1,300 miles away.
And all the other stars are fruits of different sizes and, on the average, are 2,000 miles apart. So, to make our galaxy, the Milky Way, we will need 200 to 400 billion oranges, grapefruits, cantaloupes, and pumpkins. If you could amass that much fruit, you then need to distribute them over a space 20 million miles in diameter, and that's just one galaxy.
But to show the number of stars in all the galaxies in the visible universe, it would take more oranges, grapefruits, melons, and pumpkins than have ever grown since the beginning of time. There may be 2 trillion galaxies in our universe, each with billions of stars in them.
And remember, our sun is just one of those oranges, with its 8 major planets and 5 dwarf planets, all mere specks of salt, pepper, and black beans circling less than 15 city blocks away.
Or think of it like this the next time you're in your kitchen. If we could fit our entire solar system, our sun and all its planets, including the distances between them, inside a coffee cup, our galaxy would be the size of North America.
Now, that's a cup of joe that'll really wake you up in the morning as you keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And on to your marine weather now with the sea ice update. You'll notice very little change across the west coast. This is where we will be watching for more change with warmer air pouring in, stronger winds, and continued kind of disruption in that leading ice edge. But you will notice here's St. Matthew. The marginal ice is now very close to, if not right on top of St. Matthew. And as of this morning, we were getting reports that the ice was within about 5 nautical miles or so of St. Matthew. So the map makes it look like it's right there, and it is very close. But the main ice pack is a little bit further out, and we'll continue to see strips working toward St. Matthew in the coming days as we get more of a easterly flow working through the region. But warmer air is building northward, stronger winds are coming up the west coast, so we're going to see a disruption in this ice edge, and we're also expecting to see kind of a receding ice edge across Cook Inlet as temperatures warm into the 40s tomorrow and stay mild over the weekend. As we get into southeast, we're going to see some stronger winds here as well. South and easterly flow on the inside, 30 to 35 knots sustained. Most areas looking at 5 to 8 foot seas on the inside and anywhere from 15 to 19 foot seas across the outer coast. Look for gusts to 50 knots outside of Cross Sound, heading toward Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather, and gusts to 60 as you move up toward Prince William Sound. More on that in just a minute. As we look at Saturday, winds come down just a little bit on the inside, 15 to 20 knots. You're looking at 3 to 9 foot seas, the highest of which will be around the Clarence Strait. Northwesterly winds now behind this next front, coming into about 30 to 35 knots, gusts of 40 to 45 sometimes across the outer coast, and 15 to 17 foot seas at their highest. As we get into Saturday, weather should improve on Sunday. With Friday, look for a west and southwesterly flow in the northern and western Gulf, gusts to 60 knots inside of Prince William Sound, sustained to 50. Strong gales now, it looks like, so storm force winds will improve as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. We're looking at winds around 40 to 50 knots tops. South and westerlies coming up Cook Inlet over the ice. Southerlies there at 30, 25 knots across the western Barrens with 5 foot seas on the inside. Outside, though, 18 footers from the west. Saturday, a south and westerly flow. Winds diminish in all areas. We're looking at 10 knots. Much improved weather in Prince William Sound. 2 foot seas there. 5 to 6 foot seas across the Cook Inlet region, and 20 to 25 across the north and western Gulf. 11 to 12 foot seas for your Saturday. For southwest, look for southwesterlies anywhere from 15 to 19 feet, 40-knot winds there across the open waters and into the ice. For the North Pacific, 30 knots inside of Shelikof Strait, 35 knots outside. Looking at about 16 to 17 foot seas on Friday. That comes down for eastern areas of Kodiak with a southerly wind at 30 knots. But look to the west, those strong southerlies are coming back from the Shubmagan Islands and westward. At least gales here and probably some storm force winds developing further south. Looking at 12-foot seas across the Alaska Peninsula waters in the Bering and 26-foot seas across the North Pacific there as we go through Saturday. For Friday, across the central and western chain, 30 to 40 knots. Looking for southwesterlies across the eastern chain, but everywhere else is a south and easterly flow feeding into the next area of low pressure that's developing here in the west. Looking for 15 to 17 foot seas across the Pacific. Still looking at some higher seas across Nikolsky to Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. And then east of that, winds and seas will be building as we get into your Saturday. And as that low swings through, we get sharp changes to a west and southwesterly flow, 30 to 40 knots across the eastern and central Aleutians, with up to 25 feet across the North Pacific, 14 to 15 feet across the Bering, and northwesterlies coming in behind it, 14 to 20 knot seas there with a northwest wind 20 to 35. Across the west coast, northerlies are still wrapping into low pressure as that's moving northward, dragging in warmer air, but to the east, this is the colder side moving over the ice. And again, in proximity of that ice edge, be mindful of the heavy freezing spray. Looking for 20 to 25 knots in most areas there, 8 to 10 foot seas in the open waters, and more of a westerly flow for St. Paul and St. George. But that returns on a southerly note as we get into Saturday there with 14-foot seas. You can see that sharp change moving northward and our area of low pressure working right over the ice. So this ice edge itself is going to be on the move, and probably a lot of extra ice moving around as well. East and southeasterlies over Norton Sound, 25 knots there, 30 knots around St. Matthew with a 13-foot sea in the open water. For the Beaufort Seacoast, easterlies at 25, the Chukchi 22, 30-knot winds, a northerly wind through the Bering at 25, becoming easterly on Saturday, and broad easterly winds 25 to 30 over the ice for your Saturday afternoon. Recapping tonight's weather, winter weather advisories for northern parts of southeast. The snow level is climbing. The Klondike Highway, though, winter weather advisory above 2,000 feet, 3 to 5 inches coming down hard and fast after about 3 o'clock this morning. Should be winding down. As we get into the west and southwestern Alaska regions, looking at winter weather advisories for snow and for rain, generally about 1 to 5 inches of snow in total, and warmer weather for everyone as low pressure moves northward. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.